Good afternoon. I'd like to call this special workshop meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, sure. Yes, sir. Commissioner Dollison, who is not here at the moment. Commissioner Mercer. Here. Commissioner Dantzler.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Yates.
Here.
And Mayor Birdsong.
Here. I guess we would need John to read this by title only.
Not tonight, or not right at this meeting,
All right. Take
I
it
will.
away, T.
on Monday.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a special workshop specific to municipal impact fees and regarding the extraordinary circumstances which we have verified through our Raftellus study and the recommendations for increases in our municipal service impact fees. Again, this pertains to impact fees that are assessed on new construction, one-time fees that pertain to police, fire, parks and recreation, and libraries. Joe Williams with Raftellus Financial Consultants is with us, and I'll ask Joe to come forward and give you an overview of the report. We did this last week, but for the sake of Commissioner Dantzler, who I think viewed that online, we sent it to him, but was not able to be here in case he has any questions he has this evening. I'll have Joe go through it.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I know that most of you have seen this 2 times already, and
Joe, for the record, I've seen it, so you can be brief. You don't have to go through everything.
great. Thank you.
I have a really good reading ability, so I read it through a couple times.
Great to hear. Appreciate that. All right, so we'll hit the highlights and, leave open for any questions, feedback as we go. But again, we've seen it multiple times. Second reading, I believe, is going to be this coming Monday.
Monday, the 23rd, will be second reading, at which time you'll vote on this.
Right. Okay. So again, this is a municipal impact fee study for police, fire, parks, and libraries. These are existing fees that you currently charge. They've technically been in place since 2006. I think there's been some indexing over time, but the last study dates back to 2006. So we've updated the methodology. We're taking into consideration the current Florida statutes and legal requirements. Since 2018, 2019 timeframe, there's been several updates to the specific Florida impact fee statute, noted at the bottom, 163.31801, which have each really provided a little bit more stringent requirements on the procedures and approach that can be taken. So basics, T. Michael outlined that this is a one-time charge for new development or significant redevelopment that may be changing land uses to something that's more intensive, requires additional service from these city departments. So we're not funding replacement of assets with impact fee funds. We're not correcting deficiencies in level of service, and we're not funding salaries, operating and maintenance costs. The highlight here is that we have a study that shows our work. We're here talking about the work effort, and we've used the most recent and local data available as required by Florida statutes. And our methodology is that really we worked with staff, we looked at your capital plans, we looked at future development plans, and basically have modeled out what investments is the city going to be making over the next 5 to 10 years, especially in the area of new fire stations in the areas where growth is occurring to provide the levels of service that are desired and targeted by the community, as well as parks. So new parks, major upgrades to parks to accommodate additional people and provide the types of services that people want to engage with. And then we take those costs and we divide through by the new development, and that's essentially how we calculate the impact fees. So for fire, the plan includes public safety complex 4, 5, and 6. These are new public safety complexes. They're mostly fire stations. There's a component allocated for each of these to have a little bit of police substation type facilities available. And for outfitting each of the stations, there will be approximately $10 million of additional investment in fire trucks and ambulances. So fire impact fees, you can see that there's on single family, the large increase there is 44%. It's about $240 per home. So multifamily has a relatively smaller increase because right now multifamily and single family are charged the same fee. And through this study, we're establishing a differential. So you can see $600 versus about $800.
Commissioners, you may recall, we also did that, although it's a completely separate element, but when we looked at connection fees, we also did a smaller percentage on multifamily. Again, what's the size of that facility? What's the impact that that has overall? So that's why you see a lesser number there for multifamily.
Yeah, and just a little background on that. As part of that effort with staff and your attorney, we worked through a process to identify how single family and multifamily is classified. So typically multifamily is going to be if there's 5 units or more in a single building, they fall into a multifamily category. And then the non-residential, right now you have a single fee for non-residential. We've outlined here 7 or 8 categories. So you have a little bit more nuance in your fee schedule for those that have higher demands on the services. Police, we're touching on police very briefly. So again, the public safety complexes have an allocation, but there's really not a major need for additional police facilities, significant upgrade or expansion to police headquarters. So with that existing building providing adequate space for the police department right now, it's resulting in a fee reduction for the police category. Parks and Recreation. This is an area where there is significant investment happening. And you can see that the existing investments we've identified that are not renewal and replacement type activities, about $57 million. And the major projects identified, if you tally those up, it's nearly $85 million of additional investment that's going to be going into these various projects. There's some new parks, some major upgrades, recreation center, a lot of things that are going to be providing benefits across the community and are largely driven by new development. So with those major investments, the fee is increasing from about $1,100 to $4,300 for new single family homes. And for the multifamily, $1,100 to $3,200. So quadrupling for really tripling for technically quadrupling, but increasing by a factor of 3 for a single family. Libraries, again, this one, there's really the existing library system that's in place is largely adequate. With the Winter Haven Recreational Cultural Center facility, there is space that's been allocated for library activities. So we've accounted for that allocation in this fee calculation. And the fee is a relatively slight increase at about $40. But starting with a low fee, that does result in a 40% increase. And really going into, the extraordinary circumstances of all this, the city has been growing at a really rapid pace the past 5 years, especially. There's been a lot of development, putting a lot of pressure on your existing facilities. The scale of improvements, as we talked about in the parks and then on the fire as well, existing investment to date of about $57 million in your park facilities. Over the next 10 years, $80+ million identified. So again, it's very significant need to provide the facilities for growth and just upgrading facilities as well. And of course, inflationary costs. So if you were to do these same facilities 10 or 20 years ago, the cost would have been significantly less. The cost of acquiring land constructing those buildings is significantly more than it has been in the past. So all those things are contributing to the fee calculations generally increasing outside of police. And we think that adopting these fees is going to put the city in a good place for recovering your costs from new development to help offset the impacts that otherwise would be burdened by your existing residents. So a summary, and we are including roads in the summary now. That fee is still under review. It's probably going to come to you a little bit later this summer. We have a sub-consultant working with us on doing that. And you can see that overall we're increasing from $2,400 at this time to $5,800. So more than doubling of the fees. And comparing your municipal fees, the same fees we just showed on that slide, police, fire, parks, library, and roads, to comparable fees of other communities. Some of these communities have more of an administrative or general government type fee as well. If they do, that's included here. So you can see that we're taking you from the bottom of this comparison group to about the middle, kind of lower middle range on the municipal side. And then when we add the other recently adopted utility connection fees to the mix, you can see you're going from mid-range to upper range, but still pretty close to where others are charging for new development.
And commissioners, again, when we look at this particular chart, we did a significant adjustment to our utility water sewer connection fees in August of 2024. A lot of that was tied back to improvements that are needed associated with Polk Regional Water Cooperative and the future of water. Again, putting that cost of growth back on the growth that's occurring in the area. Many of our counterparts are also looking at what their connection fees will be for water and sewers. They are also members of the Polk Regional Water Cooperative. And so even though this chart depicts Winter Haven just behind Lake Alfred in that cost, you can see that in comparison to Lakeland, it's slightly above where Lakeland is. These other cities, Haines City, Claremont, or I'm sorry, Claremont's not in Winter Haven, but Lake Wales, Auburndale, Dundee. I fully expect that we're going to see additional increases in impact fees and connection fees if they have not already contemplated doing so. So I think this is a snapshot in time, but I do expect that to change to varying degrees in the coming months or year.
And I also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
We're good.
We focused on this particular meeting on the extraordinary circumstances. And the reason we do that is because the statute that Mr. Williams referenced requires the commission to consider those in 2 special workshop meetings, this being the second of those meetings. First one was on June 9th. And the reason that that's important is because the recommendation from the consultant, Mr. Williams, Raftelis, and the city manager and myself is that the city commission adopt an ordinance that does not phase in these increases, but adopts them all at once. And they would become effective on October 1st of this year. And they would also exceed, at least in the Parks and Recreation area, the 50% limitation that's in the statute. The statute has 2 limitations. It says that you may only implement increases in impact fees in a 4 phases, so over a 4-year period, and you may not increase them more than 50%. Well, we're doing both. We're suggesting that you increase them all at once, and we're suggesting that you exceed, at least in the Parks and Rec area, the 50% limitation. You can do that if you can demonstrate that there are extraordinary circumstances in the city that necessitate or support that. And the study that has been performed by Raftelis is the empirical data, the competent evidence that we would rely on if we had to demonstrate that, at least amongst other things, our population increases, which were significant, and the inflationary pressures that are and continue to be potentially, as well as within a subcategory of that, your supply chain and other kind of issues that just are real and are relevant. So those are at least two issues that, among perhaps others, that go into the methodology and go into the suggestion or the recommendation by the consultant that we are focusing on at this particular meeting to support the recommendation to increase the fees. I also want to mention, and I would make on the record a recommendation, that we look at this more, again, perhaps in 3 years, 2, 3, or 4, I wouldn't wait, in other words. And I think Mayor Pro Tem Yates made a very cogent and very good observation at the June 9th meeting. You may have made it, I wasn't at the last meeting, but why are we going down on police when we know that maybe that may not be in the future we're binding? And our response to that is we are doing that because that's what the study recommends now. But as we look at this in 2 or 3 or 4 years, it may be very well that we would come back with a recommendation to increase that so that we're getting it, evaluated and reviewed within that 10-year window so that we don't miss the opportunity, if there is one that's appropriate, to have growth pay for itself. And because we had the previous study, and as Mr. Williams suggested, was done in 2006, we've had some escalators, but we don't want to wait for that kind of time period. And I think the statute is not going to allow us to do that. Frankly, in order to stay current, we're going to have to look at this a little more frequently than we have done in the past, which I think is probably not a bad thing.
And I would add to that, Mayor and Commissioners, the way the statute is now, so in 2006, when the fees were implemented, you could index those. So it's by the engineer's business record, annual CPI adjustment, those could be adjusted. The way the statute in Florida law is written today, we cannot index these. So these would go into play. They would remain in play for the next 4 years at a minimum. As John had said, City Attorney, we would look at this again and likely in 3 years do another study to make sure that we are on target with where we need to be. And if an adjustment needs to be made at that time, we'd bring that back for the Commission's consideration. The timing of this, just to provide some clarity, because the police impact fee is recommended to go down, that would take effect, if this is favorably considered by at least 4 of the 5 city commissioners Monday evening, that would take effect for the permits pulled the next day. So because that's a decrease. The increased impact fees, Parks and Recreation, Fire, and Libraries, those require a 90-day window before those go into play. So those would not take effect until on or about October 1st.
And to further what the city manager said, it's a good point, got to have a supermajority to approve this in its current form. So that means 4. And any pending permits, or if a building permit is issued or requested prior to October 1st, they would come in under the old rates. Yep. So if you have a builder, conceivably, could apply for a number of different permits prior to October 1st, and they would get.
With the benefit of the reduced police.
Correct. Yeah, the reduction, as you can understand, goes in immediately. And any increases have to be 90 days notice. So pretty straightforward, but just wanted to illustrate that, mainly focusing again on why the recommendation is to do it all at once and to exceed the 50%.
If I could just ask a couple of questions for clarity on a couple items. Can you go back to the single family versus multifamily comparison there? I think
Yeah, it's kind of throughout.
so they're not aggregated on one altogether between the two?
No, I did not show a
Okay.
full.
Well, I can still ask. So I think I understand the concept of single family versus multifamily, because single family is more impactful to the system when you aggregate 1,000 new single-family homes spread amongst a large area is more impactful than a multifamily units being built, that are all located in one area. But when I understand that when it comes to, I guess police and fire and those things, and garbage and water and those sort of things. But when it comes to parks and recreation, you still have the same number of people that are coming to the area, whether they're in a multifamily housing development or a single family housing development. Can you help me understand the difference between those two?
Yeah. We pull various census data, US Census data tables, and aggregate them together. So we can pull some that have number of units that are actually in the different types of dwellings, 5 or more, 6 to 10. And then we can pull population statistics as well. So we aggregate those between how we classify single family and multifamily. And people per household or per unit comes out to a 75% factor. So typically there's, for easy numbers, there's 3 people in a multifamily home and 4 people in a single family home. They're really lower than that, but that's a 75% ratio. So we're relating the park and impact fee to people demands.
Not sure I understand still.
There's less people in a unit for multifamily than single family on average, because they're smaller
Well-
size units.
Yeah, okay, so kind of.
Yeah,
But I still
understand.
don't think that really, you're the expert, but I'll just voice my opinion. I still don't see how that jives with a park and recreation impact, because a lot of it's going to be based upon affordability. And if a 4-person family can't afford a single family house, then they're going to go into a multifamily unit, where someone that is a 2-family household or 2-person household is going to move into so again, I understand it from the concept of garbage and water and sewer and all that, but I'm not sure that same equation is relevant to parks and recreation impact fee. So but
I understand your point, Mayor Pro Tem. I think if you, and again, Joe's the expert on this, but when you look at, certainly there are frequencies where you have a larger family size in a multifamily, and there's frequencies where you have a smaller family size in a single family. But on average, when you factor that out over 15, 2,000, 3,000 units, you'll find that the number of residents occupying the quantity of multifamily, the total population within that compared to single family, is how they get to it's about 75% of what on average you're going to see.
Okay.
I'll also say that from and this is from a boots on the ground perspective. Again, you're using the same concept of 75% of the population size, the occupancy. You mentioned that from a water sewer side, that that makes a lot of sense. It also does so on a police side and on a fire side, because it's concentrated as well.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to rest on, you're the expert. So that's, we've got to make our decision based upon, what's presented. And just to get on the record, just to be clear, this does, everything that you've done and studied does meet the requirements of the state standards of what they can consider an extraordinary circumstance measure test. This meets all those requirements.
From our understanding of extraordinary circumstances, which for the record is undefined, but based on doing this process in many other local governments and working with local attorneys, we believe that we're meeting the requirements for extraordinary circumstances for the city of Winter Haven.
And let me just also put a little fine point on that, Mayor Pro Tem. What I think Mr. Williams is also saying is that has not, to my knowledge, the extraordinary circumstances has not been judicially determined yet or interpreted, nor has the Florida Attorney General, to my knowledge, weighed in on opining as to what that may or may not, which I doubt they will. If we're going to see a definition of that, it's either going to come from the legislature, which hasn't been forthcoming yet, or it's going to be based on case law, decisional case law that a court applying the law would come up with a determination or holding. So we're basing it on what we understand and what the experts are telling us are the considerations for extraordinary circumstances. These have been used in other jurisdictions, and we think that these are supportable. And that's certainly the evidence that we would use if challenged to determine that. There is unfortunately, however, no litmus test yet, like there is on other aspects of impact fees, the dual rational nexus test and some of the other statute embedded things. That issue has been largely, it's sort of new.
So just real quick, any conversations that I've had with citizens from the June 9th meeting to today, no one has said you shouldn't do this. If they're against it, I've found that it's from a lack of understanding of what an impact fee is and when it's charged. And so I've tried to educate in those conversations along the way. So no, I have not received any feedback from, hey, no, don't do this. I think it's something that we probably, like we've discussed a little bit, but yeah, probably wish we could have done this in 2020 or 2021, but we are where we are today. And, it's hard to fix the wrong to a right, but we can get it right going forward, hopefully. And that's what we're doing here. Unfortunately, as I've previously stated, I will not be at the meeting on Monday night. So had a vacation that's been planned for 2 years, long before this study came out, and we wanted to implement this. So I apologize for not being here on Monday. But for what it's worth, I support this, and it's something that's needed. So,
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. If I could just add one point to the dialogue that's happened so far, I also want to remind the commission, when you look at impact fees, police and fire impact fees address new development in all of our zoning. So when you're talking about commercial, industrial, and residential, they all have an impact on police and fire. Parks and recreation, libraries only pertain to residential. So we don't, if there's a new industrial project going into the ILC, there's not an impact to the parks and recreation. There's not an impact to the library, so they're not assessed that.
All right. So I got a couple. Ether line? Mm-hmm. So just a couple things. And I'm pretty up to speed with this because I was watching you guys when I was in California. Clearly, this is a big deal, Joe, because this is the third presentation. You can probably do it one more time. So we must obviously think this is a big deal to raise this much, okay? And I'm always one to hate raising fees. I don't really like raising fees, but particularly when the city's flush right now, it seems like we have money. But I understand that this is a necessary thing to growth pay for growth. It's a good way to look at it. Could you give me, Brian already touched on this, what kind of public input or what kind of public outcry are we getting? Are we getting any? Because I haven't gotten any. I did 3 television interviews last week. It's run in local print media. I've not, the people that I've spoken with, much like what Mayor Pro Tem Yates expressed, is people that are already here and want to make sure that those that are yet to come are shouldering their proportionate share of new investment that comes and is needed because of them coming here, versus that being placed upon the backs of the current taxpayer. The media interviews that we participated in last week also went into the community, and I can only speak for what was shared from those individuals that were interviewed, and the response again was favorable towards making growth pay for growth. Okay. Switching gears to the roads budget. I didn't even realize we had a road impact fees? Where is that money going? And what are we using? Can you give me some example of what we're using that money for?
Certainly. So transportation impact fees apply to, those are another one that apply to all types of development. And they are, that would go towards the development of new roads and improve, anytime you're using an impact fee. Those dollars are set aside. They are specifically accounted for in an impact fee fund. They can only be used for investments into projects that expand your service capabilities. The best examples I can give you on roads at this time would be the unfunded project of Willowbrook Road. That is the road connection between State Road 544 and Lucerne Park and MLK Boulevard, Buckeye Loop area, road area. The cost associated with Logistics Parkway, that's a road that we are expanding to accommodate growth, that is specifically growth within the ILC. Any roads that would be widened that are local roads, those are probably the best examples I can give you of projects we have on the books right now. MJ, the cost for Willowbrook Road is, do we have an estimate on that?
Yeah, I believe it was, I believe we estimated 10 million in the grant applications that we submitted to the state and federal level.
Well, what my thought is, and my recommendation is whenever we're going to do something like this, I think we need to show something. I'm talking about low-hanging fruit, and I've got a couple of ideas, but, you know, particularly when it comes to roads, you know, Sage Road is something that's really
That's
near to
another
me.
one. Yes, sir.
But if we put that out there and say, this is going to pay for Sage Road within the next 3 years or whatever it is, that's something we can point to. In the same way with Parks and Recreation, everybody loves Parks and Recreation. The TV shows helped a lot. Everybody loves Julie. Everybody loves Parks and Recreation. But we need to get like a pickleball court, build 4 more courts over here right out of the chute, or build another splash pad or whatever's on that list. You had a whole list of things, but we need to get some low-hanging fruit and point to it quickly that this is what this is paying for. You know, Sage Road, everybody wants that. Everybody wants more pickleball courts. Everybody wants another splash pad, whatever it is. Let's come up with some low-hanging fruit and do it quickly and say, this is what it's paying for. Because everybody loves Parks and Recreation. I mean, I like clean water, but I do like tennis courts too. You know what I mean? So
I think you're spot on, Commissioner Dancer. And I think that when we look in Southeast Winter Haven and the need to acquire land for parks where we've had, you know, probably close to 1,000, if not 2,000 new homes developed, you know, south of Thompson Nursery Road between Villamar and all the projects that are down 653. Those are things that we're exploring right now. Where can we do that? We have some thoughts. And that's exactly what these dollars help us accomplish.
see, that's big ticket stuff. Let's get some little stuff that we can point to, and you know, that says this is what this money's going for those people that care. I'm not so sure a lot of people really care other than certain developers, but maybe they do. I just think it's like anytime we raise fees or we do something like this, I want to be able to point to something very quickly and say, this is what's paying for it.
In Sage Road, I think you're spot on. That's one that we've got on the books. You have an item on your city commission agenda for Monday night that speaks to some of our early efforts on the design concepts and exploration into where we could do pickleball facilities. You know, those are the types of things that these dollars go to.
Well, we can sit around and study stuff to death. But we can do something faster. That's what I'm trying to get to. I don't want to have, no offense to you, Joe, you did a great study, but we can do studies and studies and studies, but we know we need more pickleball courts. So let's just go build them. You know what I mean? We don't need to do another 6-month study. Let's go do it. And we know we got to get Sage Road done. We've got the right of way. Let's just figure out how to go do it. Let's don't have another study. Let's just go do it. So all I'm trying to do is get something out of the chute quick, and then we can study parks, you know, a big $50 million park in Southeast Winter Haven down the road. That's my thought. And the last thing, and again, I'm inclined to support this, like Commissioner Yates just said. I don't like being from the bottom of the list now to the top of the list. We're third from the top. And I hear what you said, that a lot of people are probably right behind us, but they're going to do studies. You know, and That's, is that everything? That's not all of them. That's not all in. Because we were like third from the top. Oh, there's the blues on the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. This is with your utility connection fees.
So we're number 2 in the whole Polk County. St. Cloud is, not in Polk County. Ocoee's not.
Yeah, and what I'll offer is, as we looked at it with the utility study, there's the balance between low monthly rates, trying to get as much as possible from new development to help offset the pressure on monthly rates. We don't have the monthly rate comparison in here because it's not a utility rate study, but you are relatively very low on that monthly cost to your existing residents for water and sewer compared to a lot of others in the county.
Right. But that's not, you're just throwing that in there for
That's for
comparison.
existing residents. These are for
Okay.
developers.
That's it. I mean, it's probably necessary and, it's just never fun to do this kind of thing, but I know it's important. So that's all I got, Mayor. I'm done.
Anyone else? All right, motion to adjourn.
So move.
We stand adjourned. We're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll come back at 6:11. I'd like to call to order this agenda review at 6:11. Can I get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Dollison, who is not present. Commissioner Mercer. Here. Commissioner Dantzler.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Yates.
Here.
And Mayor Birdsong.
Here. All right, we will have our invocation and pledge of allegiance, presentations that will be done on Monday. We don't have any developments of note. The minutes. We have comments from the audience. And then ordinances, second reading. Since we've heard these ordinances before, twice so far, can you give us a recap, quick version?
Yeah.
City Manager?
Certainly. On the ordinance O2515 and O2516, this is signing neighborhood suburban future land use and multifamily low residential R3 zoning. These are 4 parcels, 93.4 plus or minus acres, depicted on your map. This is off of Old Bartow Lake Wills Road, down at the southernmost end of County Road 653. You voted on April 28th to send these to the Florida Department of Commerce and other state agencies for review. We received comments back from Florida Commerce on May 28th, suggesting they had no objections or changes, and it's the same item as you had heard before. There's been no changes otherwise. The overall development is trying to find 362 single-family residential units. So this is your land use and zoning.
Okay. 24 and 25.
Item O2524 is the annexation of the property the city acquired immediately adjacent to wastewater treatment plant 3 is depicted on your map. This is off of 4th Street East, part of the Juanita community. We acquired this property in January. It's intended for the future expansion of the water resource facility there at wastewater treatment plant 3. And this is annexing this into the city of Winter Haven.
All right.
And then 25 is what we just went over with respect to updating and adjusting the city's municipal impact fees.
All right, consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask staff to present on these this evening in very brief content. So Mr. Van Druten is here with IT in place of Hip Win this evening. He'll give you a quick update on the purchase of the UpGuard vendor system.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. This item is a part of our ongoing effort to ensure cybersecurity. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has established a framework for cybersecurity that meets the industry standards. The city has adopted this framework, and one of the recommendations included is to develop a strategy for evaluating risk associated with current technology vendors and evaluating future vendors. To achieve this, we are proposing to work with a company called UpGuard, which is a third-party risk management platform that provides a variety of tools for reducing potential risk associated with outsourcing. These include cybersecurity breaches, operational risk, legal, regulatory, and compliance risk. As an example, the platform will perform real-time monitoring of software like Granicus to ensure that all proper security measures on their end are in place. We are currently utilizing more than 40 different softwares citywide, and utilizing the service will help us ensure that all those tools are meeting our cybersecurity standards. This item is budgeted for fiscal year 2025. The cost of work is $15,199 annually. We're looking to enter a 3-year agreement totaling $45,597. Staff recommends the City Commission approve the purchase of UpGuard, the third-party risk management software platform, subscription for $45,597 for a 3-year term, and authorize the city manager or his designee to execute all documents and take all the other necessary actions related to the purchase approved herein.
Again, part of our cybersecurity
Yes,
efforts.
Mr. Mayor, I got one question on that.
go ahead.
Is this company or this software, has it been vetted and is it approved by the National League of Cities?
I can look into that for you and get you an answer.
Okay. Yeah, they've got a whole list of vendors and things that we should be doing. And the only reason I know that is because I go to their national conference every year, and this is a big deal for them. And they've got some really good criteria that you should make sure that you're checking these boxes for that. So,
Yes, sir. I'll get you an answer on that one.
okay.
Go ahead.
Could you give us one example of what some of the risk may be in the software?
Yeah, so when we use third-party vendors, it gives them a security score and their security posture. So we can evaluate and say, hey, this vendor that we're working with is a C minus compared to we're looking for A minus, A plus. So they do a lot of metrics and they actually do real-time monitoring to determine those different metrics of how secure that vendor is. So I'm sure you're aware of this one of the security vendors that had that airline breach where it caused a huge disruption on that. This is going to help us evaluate the vendors that we have and make sure that those things don't happen and don't impact operations here at the city.
Well, there's certainly no more important item, I think, in any municipality or certainly in my field, the financial industry, than cybersecurity. So, I mean, it is what it is, and we've got to stay ahead of the guys that are trying to break into the systems. I've got one question that's kind of in this thing, and it doesn't have to be answered tonight, but it's really an ask that maybe I'd love to have a presentation at some point. But, we've got the water department, we've got Parks and Rec, we've got police, we've got fire, we've got garbage, we've got all of these different entities under our umbrella as a municipality. And I don't know the answer to this, but I'm curious, does everyone have their own independent software system that they're working out of? And do those systems talk to one another so that it makes it more streamlined for if a request is made, for example, a public record request? Do you have to go to this system and that system and that system? And, I don't need an answer tonight, but it's just something that I've kind of been contemplating as of late. Like, how efficient are we with our operating systems within our departments?
So let me give you a quick answer to that while we're on the topic. So when we acquire software, integration is a key piece. So we have an ERP, an enterprise resource platform, which is New World or Tyler Technologies. You may have heard of talk about that. That's what controls all of our financials. Also is a huge component within our human resources management. When we buy a software platform that does something, it needs to talk to that, it has to integrate. There has to be an interface with that. So we use UKG as part of our timekeeping software. There has to be an interface between UKG and New World. We're working with a new budgeting software program right now called OpenGov. Again, it has to interface, it has to integrate, they have to be able to communicate. That is a key component in pretty much anything we're doing that is financial, that is dealing with human resources. There are some very specific platforms that are, going to be housed just within one operation that don't necessarily need to talk to the other platforms. They're independent in what they're storing. But anytime that we're doing something that has to interface between departments, that integration is a key component, and that's vetted out. Fortunately, a lot of the major software platforms we use, we're able to accomplish that relatively easily because they're doing this in so many different cities and organizations that they've already built in that integration model. So in terms of records requests, we use Just FOIA is our platform in which records requests come in. Just FOIA doesn't talk to those systems. It gets the information out to our directors and to our staff, and then they pull the information. It depends on what someone's asking for. Police records aren't interfacing with New World records. Those are housed specifically within police. So there is some decentralization where it's very specific and that as I just pointed out, is very much by design, but where we have an opportunity to interface those together, that is just a fundamental approach to software management and software acquisition. And really, if you were to study, there's plenty of case studies out there on federal platforms, state platforms, local platforms that have failed because they didn't contemplate, can this talk to the other systems that it needs to talk to? That's critical for us.
Cool. Yeah, and this product will just add one note. It will help us evaluate future vendors. So it gives us that ability to look, forward and say, hey, who are we working with, and making sure that their security postures aligns with what we're looking for as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioner, item 10B, Andy Palmer and Julie Adams will present this. This is pertaining to our RFQ 2515, which is design build services for improvements at the Diamondplex softball complex, as well as our work towards a pickleball complex.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's good evening. RFQ 2515 Diamondplex renovation and pickleball design was issued on February 10th, and we had 3 firms submit on that. Diamondplex is actually almost 30 years old. It's the home of the Polk State College women's softball team, and we have league play there almost every weekend with Rebel Spring games, and we have some great league play during the week as well. With that, we also we paired our pickleball site evaluation and design with that, as it's a very discipline. Whitehead Construction ranked #1 out of 3 firms submitted, and the team has extensive experience in sports fields and courts and sports courts and building in Central Florida and in Winter Haven. Currently, just to recap, the city has $1 million budgeted towards the Diamondplex project in this fiscal year, and phase 1 construction with phase 2 requested next fiscal year. On the pickleball side, the city currently has $100,000 budgeted towards a site selection process and subsequent design. Overall, this action is actually for the rankings. The Diamondplex component would contemplate a design and a needs assessment and list, and a phase 1 construction would be anticipated with our next action, which would include our typical boilerplate design build contract. That needs list includes kind of on a high level items to contemplate new field lighting, new fencing, complete field renovations with turf, irrigation, and clay, potential building renovations, drainage improvement, fan area, and entry improvements. And that needs list would be contemplated and designed based on really, again, kind of that overall needs assessment. Phase 2 construction would commence with based on additional approval and funding becomes available. On the pickleball end, the scope would be anticipated to include a site selection process and evaluation and subsequent design. With that, some potential options for phasing may be explored, and additional steps on that portion of the project would be based on a final location design and further actions on that. So staff recommends that the City Commission approve the award of RFQ 2515 and authorize the city manager to negotiate the design build contract for these items, which would be brought back for your approval.
So, Mayor and Commissioners, this is, again, go back to our prior conversation on impact fees. We look at Diamondplex, this is about taking a 30-year-old heavily utilized facility and making the repair and maintenance improvements to that. So fencing, lighting, addressing areas that have been experienced wear and tear over that 30-year window. I can't use impact fees for that. I'm not expanding services. I'm not creating more fields. It's just that's normal wear and tear. And we have, as Andy said, money budgeted this year to begin that process. And then we've also included in our budget request for fiscal year 26 a second allocation towards that effort. Now, on the pickleball aspect, and we've had some preliminary conversations. Commissioner Dantzler and I engaged in some discussions several months ago with Polk State College. Is there an opportunity for us to build actual courts there? We need to vet that out further with them. They've had some other developments happen at the college that may impact that. But wherever those pickleball courts are to be located, Those are new facilities. Those are additional amenities that are not available to residents today. Those can be funded through impact fees. And this, again, as Andy said, this is just to award the agreement or the contract to Whitehead and their design build team, and then we'll negotiate the design build services and bring that back for official action.
Question? All right. Thank you.
Item 10C, this is just a standard item. This is pertaining to my attendance at the Winter Haven Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors Strategic Planning Retreat that will take place in July. Item 10D, I'm going to ask Eric to present this. The commission is familiar with the Grand Central from the CRA board meeting, but Eric, if you could go over this for the benefit of all.
Sure. Mayor and Commissioners, this is the developers agreement that memorializes the development incentive package for the Grand Central cooperative project at the corner of 3rd and Central, right here in the heart of downtown. It is a TIF rebate, 60% rebate for 20 years. It's a building preservation reimbursement grant, which is 5 equal payments of $400,000 based on performance metrics by the developer over a period of 5 years, and a water and sewer connection fee reimbursement. Again, you saw this as the CRA board. It is approximately a $20 million project to rehab 4 buildings in the heart of our downtown. And staff's recommendation is to approve the developers agreement with Grand Central.
Any questions? All right.
Just to reiterate on that preservation allocation that or payment that we would do, that is contingent upon performance and attainment or achievement of very specific metrics that are outlined in the developers agreement. And it is a reimbursement. It is not just an outright payment. There has to be work that's completed of a certain value in line with what the developers agreement outlines.
So, sorry.
Go, I'm sorry.
So building on kind of the conversation that happened in the CRA meeting. So it's going to fall on you to make that call. If they come to you with, we've spent, $500,000 or $1 million or whatever it is on plans and specs and steps there to move forward, but actually haven't hardened the building, I'm taking that to be, that's not something that you would improve to disperse the funds at that
Eric,
point.
can you elaborate on exactly what that first tranche is tied to?
Sure. So the language in the agreement, the payment number 1 is contingent upon $500,000 paid for construction expenses related to phase 1A and phase 1B. That's not the development of plans or soft costs. Phase 1A and 1B are the exterior rehab of those 4 buildings. And so there's additional language in there indicating that this, as you pointed out, the city manager has the authority to approve the project and the progress of the project and their material compliance with the terms of this agreement. And so, to your point, if they've only spent money on mobilization and soft costs, plan development, I think the agreement speaks to that the city manager would have the authority to say no.
I just didn't want to have any different interpretation at the 11th hour or something like that. So I just wanted to be clear. So thank you.
I have 2 questions. The parking lot over there, Harlan Red, what's going on with the parking lot?
We retain ownership of that. That was part of the Onyx deal that was terminated in December of 2023. We retain ownership and it will stay a public parking lot.
Why is it in red?
It's just to denote the location.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
It
not
has
part of the
nothing to do
project.
with all this.
Has nothing to do with the
Okay.
project.
The second question, have we limited T on how much he can approve? Can he approve 100 million, 10 million, and how much?
$500,000 is, or $400,000 is the reimbursable amount for the preservation portion of this. And that is over a period of 5 years. And so it's $400,000 per year within that. Now, I don't expect this to take 5 years to be completed, but it's going to take them 5 years to get the reimbursement on that. So it's by December 31st, I think it is, of this year is the soonest that they could get their first payment.
December 15th.
December 15th.
Yes, sir.
So
So
$400,000 a year for 5
for
years,
5 years.
2 million.
And also an additional metric in there is they will not be eligible to receive payments 3, 4, or 5 until they completely finish the exterior rehab of all 4 buildings. So if something happens and they're delayed and they don't complete the complete rehabilitation of all 4 buildings, they are not eligible to receive the final 3 payments.
And T, you're comfortable doing this, and
Sir.
you'd rather us not approve this much expenditure?
No, I think when we looked at this, this is a major, this is a half a block of downtown Winter Haven that has sat vacant despite the efforts of many to try and rehab and revitalize these spaces. And it's, financially has not been able to work. I think it has a negative impact on downtown. It's certainly an issue of blight. It lacks economic synergy to support everything else around it. And when I look at this, if these buildings are going to be rehabbed and made productive, the city's going to have some involvement in it.
Oh, I got no problem with that, and you're right. I mean, we don't want another Lake Wales where they have that building that's been sitting there forever. We got to get this under. But I'm just talking about the chain of command when you're spending that much money.
Yeah, I think
there's no commission involvement.
Well, and that's, certainly if it's at the pleasure of the commission, as we're getting ready to make those reimbursements, that can be a report back to the commission at the time that they make their request and provide the documentation. I'm fine with it either way, but I feel confident that between our building division, our CRA staff, Eric and Cedric, we can effectively as a team evaluate the work that has been done in consideration of what is outlined within the developers agreement, and appropriate that.
For some reason, I thought your limit was 250 before you had to come back to the commission.
Well, it's 50,000 before I come back to the commission, unless it's detailed in the budget. Otherwise, that's per our procurement manual. But this is, if the commission authorizes it to move forward in this fashion, then certainly that gives me the authority to do that because that's an action you're taking. If you would prefer that to be a city commission authorization and I bring it back to you, I'm happy to do that just the same.
I don't know if it'd gum up the works or not, but I feel like for your protection, for our protection, for the taxpayers' protection, we should have a hand in it somehow.
I'm fine with that.
I'm just thinking out loud. That's all. I'm just trying to think this through because.
And I don't think that changes the developer agreement in any way. I think that's simply a protocol that if you want to put that in play, that when those requests come in, that before they are authorized, it is brought forward to the city commission.
I know it'd be simpler for us not to do that, but I feel like we should.
You meet every 2 weeks, so it's easy enough to do.
It's going to help you. It'll give you an extra layer of protection if something shit hits the fan, you know what I mean? Or excuse me, if something goes wrong. I didn't mean to say that. I apologize for any funny listening audience. So,
if that's the view of the commission, we can certainly.
That's just me. I don't care.
Yeah, but it's not in the agreement. The agreement is the commission's action to allow the delegation of that authority to you. That's what you approved as a CRA anyway. So we'd have to take it back to the CRA.
I get what
Yeah.
Commissioner Dantzler is saying, and but city manager's willing to take this on.
Yeah.
I think he's probably going to give us an update as well as the main CRA board. Either it's a week before it's dispersed or the week after it's dispersed or whatever. We'll visually see the progress that's happening.
It'll be communicated. I can assure you that.
If it's going to gum up the works, then let's keep the progress moving forward, and city manager's willing to take it on. So.
If it gives you any comfort, from a responsibility standpoint, I can tell you that we approve contracts to build $23 million recreation centers, right? And when those payment requests come in and they're reviewed by the staff that are overseeing the project, they're by our engineering team. Ultimately, I'm the person signing off on those. Is that payments going out? And those can range anywhere from, $100,000 to $1 million in a single payment, but it's based upon a thorough review of the schedule of values and the work that's been done.
No, I don't doubt the project. Let's get it done. We got to get that corner fixed. So
Yep.
we got to.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Item 10E is transfer of McLean Road. This is, again, down where the prior item we discussed for the Cassie development is just to the north of McLean Road. This is a partially improved county right-of-way that runs from Old Bartow Lake Wills Road north and dead ends into the property that we had just discussed for second reading. The remaining unimproved portion of the road will be improved when that property is developed. And with all of the property surrounding this being within the city limits of Winter Haven, it's appropriate to transfer that ownership and maintenance from the county to the city.
All right, Senate Bill 2C.
Okay, so this is item 10F. Vance, I'm going to ask Chief Monroe, Chief Lance Monroe, for those that were at Juneteenth, to come forward and talk about this. I just want to say to kind of introduce this. This goes back to the 2025 special session of the Florida legislature that occurred before the opening of the regular session. As you know, immigration was a key topic, the only topic discussed during that, and it resulted in the creation or the passage of Senate Bill 2C, and this is our requirement in compliance with that. So, Chief Monroe.
Yes, sir. This task force agreement will allow us the ability to question individuals about their immigration status, but we're not talking about doing roundups. That's not what this is about. This is being in line with the statute that just been enacted. Also, we can serve and execute warrants. Essentially, this is going to give us the ability to transport these individuals once we make contact with them to either Orlando or Tampa. That's essentially what this is. Along with working with ICE. They're going to provide us the training. We're going to train every member within the agency so that at any time a member can transport. How it's a little different here in Polk because we actually have an ICE member down there at the Polk County Jail that's housed with the sheriff. You know, the sheriff is a chairperson of that committee, and this stuff is changing daily. It's changing daily. But currently, with this task force, it's not carte blanche for us turning us into many ICE agents. That's not what we're going to do. We're not going to be stopping people just to check their immigration status. That's not what we're here to do. We're not going to be doing traffic stops just to ascertain a person's immigration status. During the regular course of business with probable cause, if we stop a vehicle, we may ask them some questions, and in the bookend process, we will be asking questions. That's just part of it, to ascertain their status. So when we start, this is some processes and stuff that we're gonna have to change within the police department, but these processes are gonna be uniform across the board. So when we ask the question, start asking these questions, we're gonna be asking them to everyone that we stop, not just the people that are suspected to be immigrants. But this particular agreement just specifically gives us the authority to question in certain times under the authority of ICE. We cannot execute federal warrants. So if we stop someone, this has been going on ever since I've been in law for over 29 years. We've been doing this. Now everything is just being formalized.
So, Mayor and Commissioners, let me expand a little bit on this. With the passage of the Senate bill, what it allows us to do, or what it requires us to do, I should say, not allows, but requires us to do, is really no different than if we stopped an individual and we're checking their history and we find that there's a federal warrant out for an individual, a DEA warrant, a Homeland Security warrant. We're required to report that, hey, we have Brad Dantzler and he's got a warrant on him. And we work with those agencies as we have for as long back as they've been in existence to let them know we have Brad Dantzler and you have a warrant out for him. In this case, ICE being the key point here. If we arrest somebody, if we encounter somebody and through our normal course of action identify that there's a warrant for them, if we arrest somebody and we identify that they do not have legal status, we are required to report that back to ICE. We are not going to be out pulling people from the streets. This is just a new protocol within our engagement and encountering of people as we are carrying out our responsibilities. We'll notify the appropriate personnel with the sheriff's office or with the Tampa office. We may end up having to transport somebody if there is an immigration warrant out for somebody. We may end up having to transport them to that facility. But it is simply acting as an extension and folding that into our normal course of business. One of the things that Chief Monroe shared with me in developing this is a memorandum of understanding actually between the city, the Winter Haven Police Department, and ICE is how this is set up. This is the same memorandum of understanding that is in place with other local law enforcement jurisdictions, to include the sheriff's office. When we stop somebody, they have to provide identification, meaning their driver's license or some type of valid Florida ID or otherwise. And the question being asked of what is your location of birth? Where were you born? There's not you have to produce paperwork to show that. If we stop you and you have a Florida driver's license, in order to get that driver's license, you had to have some legal standing in order to get that. So regardless of any demographic descriptor, every person will be asked the same questions in the process going forward. So I will say that the downside of not engaging in the memorandum of understanding would be the likelihood of having any federal funds or state funds withheld from the city of Winter Haven.
So is participate the right wording in the description here? Or would it be better read to meet the standards required?
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's not so we can join, we're doing what's required by us to.
I would concur with that statement, sir.
So I never thought we'd end up voting on something like this, but here we are. So my question, so I get pulled over. I'm a middle-aged white guy. I'm middle-aged. So are you going to ask me my status?
Yes, sir.
Everybody gets asked the same questions.
Yes, sir.
As if somebody else gets pulled over.
I don't
That'll be
care.
part of
I
the-
don't care how old you are or how young you are. You're going to get asked that same question.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
There's no
You're not going to try to distinguish between one person from the
I
next.
can't, let's be realistic. I can't sit up here and say, okay, you're an immigrant. You can be Russian, you can be Yugoslavian, you can be Chinese, you can be Korean. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So everybody be treated the same.
Yes, sir.
And if we don't do this and we risk losing federal and state funding, that's what this is kind of what it's coming down to. I think that's why this is coming up, right? Because we've got funding on the line. And okay.
I don't know how to give comfort to this other than to say, it is simply assisting the federal government at the direction of the state government in carrying out that law enforcement mission. It's tied specifically to immigration, but it's really no different than if it was DEA or the FBI or Homeland Security or anything else. It's just, in this case, it's very specific to immigration.
Right. Well, there's going to be some funny responses. Y'all need to record them because you pull me over and ask my immigration status. I'm a frustrated comedian already. I'm going to have fun with that.
I probably would too. But one thing you got to remember here, after 9/11, President Bush did the same thing before. This is not the first time we entered this task force model, because it was done because after finding out that we had several terrorists that trained here in the state of Florida, They allowed local law enforcement officers certain powers with ICE. So this is nothing new. This is nothing new.
Okay, but it's preserving funding. That's why we're dealing with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Item 10G. This is an extension of our LAP agreement. I'm sorry, our DEP agreement. And Gary, you want to present this, please, sir?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. This is an agreement with Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We've had this grant for some time. It's associated with extending reclaimed water, basically from the Villamar development up 653 to Eloise Loop, Thompson Nursery Road, and extended on down towards new development, which I believe previously was called Ashton Preserve. And because of the delay of that development, this project was delayed. So this basically is an extension of that agreement so that we can continue this work. And recently received bids on this project. So we're asking for or recommending approval for this time extension for this grant so we can continue on with the project.
All right.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you, Gary.
Gary, you want to take the next three?
Sure. So this next one, 10H, this is replacement of emergency bypass lift station for Plant 2. The existing emergency bypass station is basically just wore out. There's not much left to it. And coming into hurricane season, we felt like this was an appropriate item to bring forward. So we're basically asking for replacement of this. The cost of the replacement generator is basically $80,300. And we're asking for City Commission approval to replace this emergency bypass pump. Any
To do it.
questions?
All right.
All right, next item, 10I. This is grit removal and basically grit and debris removal at Plant 3 from one of the tanks there, and it's called the Anox tank. What occurs over time as we receive flow into the plant, there is suspended material in the flow itself, and that material will settle out when velocities decrease. And over time, they settle into the bottom of the basin. So earlier this year, we engaged with, I forget the name of the company now. Setavision. Thank you, David. Setavision, and they basically, they did sonar on our tank, and they were able to identify where the sediments had deposited in the tank. So this agreement is to basically use that information and a piggyback agreement to remove those materials that have deposited in the tanks at Plant 3. The total cost of this work is roughly $147,000, and this work will improve the efficiency of our treatment plant while we continue on towards building new facilities. So this is timely in its nature, and we're asking the City Commission to approve this item.
All right.
A bit
Questions?
more capacity in your tank too, huh?
It will improve, yeah, it will give us more capacity in our tanks, and it's timely considering the work that we're headed towards this coming year. Any other questions?
10J.
Next item, 10J. This is Lake Elbert Drive, Northeast Emergency Sewer Repair. So as part of the work that's been ongoing with the Lake Elbert project with the, the replacement of existing infrastructure out there, depression was recognized near the entrance of Lake Elbert Drive and Dundee Road, and it's shown right here on this map. Basically what has occurred, this is old gravity sewer main in this area, and there's a failure in the area. So we're proposing to line the section that has failed and to make this repair. The total cost of the repair is roughly $54,000. We have sufficient funds budgeted in FY25, so we need to make this repair and finish up that Lake Elbert project. And we're asking for city commission approval.
How long will that solution last?
So that solution of lining the pipe is probably a 15 to 20-year solution.
And have we already put down the new road in that area?
So they are working on that right now. They have done, and Andy can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we just drove it today. All the inside lane around the lake is done. They were milling and paving the outside lane of that road today. Probably finish up into the week perhaps with that, Andy. That'll get the road done. And then they'll have to do, they still have some trail work to do. They're gonna have to replace some of what they did do. They're gonna have to undo it and redo it because of the massive rainfall that we had over the past couple weeks. Some of those areas got damaged as a result of that. And that's just because they, if the pavement's not down, you lose lime rock and it just becomes a mess.
So in 15 years, do you reline it again, or do you have to come up with a tear up the road?
In 15 years, we'll of course TV that section of line again. And
You'll still be here, right, Gary?
Yeah, I'll still be here.
Mayor will.
That's inevitable.
I hope
Yeah, we hope you all will.
that I'm above ground at least.
But you see what I'm getting? Like,
I see where you're at. Now, we will evaluate the pipe again in the future and make that decision at that time, whether it's beneficial to try to mend the pipe again or to go in and replace it. Given the paving activities that are underway currently, we felt like this was the proper solution instead of tearing up a roadway to completely replace the pipe.
And it is a relatively small section.
Okay.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
All right.
Resolutions this evening for Monday night's consideration. We do have the acceptance of a warranty deed. This is again the property along 4th Street East in Juanita that we acquired from Gary M. Bennett. This is the acceptance of that through Resolution 2529. Resolution 2530. This is assigning the name Willowbrook Road to the unnamed north-south road that runs through city right-of-way. This is coming off of Lucerne Park Road down through the Willowbrook North project. The south end of the Willowbrook project has already been named Willowbrook Road, but the north side has not. So this is just proposing to assign that name so that there's a continuation of the roadway in there. Again, we don't have the funds to build this at present time. We did ask for funding to construct that or to begin the design and permitting portion of that in the state budget. It does not appear that that survived through the budget process. However, it is in Representative Scott Franklin's federal appropriation short list. We were informed this week, so it is still alive at the federal level, and we'll continue to pursue grant dollars there.
T, I don't mean to split hairs, but you keep saying Willowbrook Road, but you've got Willowbrook Drive written down here. What is it?
Willowbrook Drive. Willowbrook Drive. My apologies, sir.
Okay, no problem. I just
Yeah.
wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah.
Willowbrook Drive.
Thank you. Next is 2531. This is pertaining to Villamar. As you know, they're developing that in phases. So this is for us to accept certain improvements and dedications in favor of the city, as noted on the plat for Villamar Phase 7. This contains 393 building lots, 7 common lots, approximately 108.7 plus or minus acres as depicted on your screen. They did issue a bond in the amount of $391,435 to guarantee completion of the infrastructure. Staff's recent inspections did find all of those incomplete improvements are now complete. Thus, the water, wastewater, and reuse utilities can be accepted by the city. The city does not accept ownership and/or related maintenance responsibilities for the drainage, infrastructure, the internal roads, and/or street lighting within the subdivision, as those go back to the CDD.
Quick question, back to our situation. We're talking about impact fees. Could they come in here and ask for building permits on all of those at one time? And
In theory, they could.
do what?
In theory, they could, yes. They could drop off a truckload of permit applications.
And there's nothing to stop them from doing that. And there's
No,
no
sir.
time limit. They have to build within a certain period of time or go.
A permit is good for approximately a year or until the Florida Building Code is updated. If the Florida Building Code is updated, they need to submit new plans.
So theoretically, a year from now, if they haven't built, they would have to reapply and then have to pay the higher impact fees.
Yes, sir.
Theoretically. Depends on what happens in the legislature. Sometimes they toll things depending on storms and different
Okay.
stuff happens. So
Do we contemplate that happening, Eric, by any chance, or?
We may see a little rush of permits, and our staff is prepared.
Okay.
The next resolution, R 2532. This came before you previously, however, this needs to be done through a resolution, and this is changing the completion date on a grant that was awarded to the city by FDOT. It's a $3 million grant for the reconstruction of Pollard Road and the extension of Logistics Parkway to connect the two roadways. So this is extending that completion date to January 6th of 2027. That is also the same completion date for the Florida Commerce Grant that also goes towards this project. We'll remind the commission that we have closed on the Florida CAN property. And so we are getting ready to put out to bid our construction of that final phase of that project.
All right.
First reading, these just went before the Planning Commission in June of this year. This is Arc Industries. This is property that was annexed into the city not too awful long ago. You can see this is down off of Snively Avenue. This is to the west of the Harmony development. They're requesting the assignment of from neighborhood suburban future land use to neighborhood mixed use hub future land use, and to assign the commercial highway C3 zoning district to the parcels. This did go before the Planning Commission, as I said, and was approved to be recommended to go before the city. The development of this property is intended to be Cypress Junction Montessori's new school campus. I had the pleasure of meeting with their contractor and the head of school today to go over that project, and they anticipate potentially turning dirt in there in August of this year with an opening date of August 2026.
Help me explain where exactly this is.
So if you come off of Eloise Loop Road, if you're coming towards town and you go through the roundabout
Yeah.
and come out to Snively,
Yes.
it's basically that area where Eloise Loop used to flood real bad.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the southern end of this. And then it runs north up to Croton Road.
All right, I get confused with southern and northern and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
go
so-
right or left.
You turn right onto Snively.
Yeah.
And as you go up, Croton Road was an old road that's actually been closed up there. It's all that property to your right between Snively Avenue and the railroad track. It's old Grove land right now. I think there's a couple buildings on the property that are.
How big is it again?
There's two parcels there.
Let me see.
33 plus or minus acres.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
New business this evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. The first item is an agreement for purchase and sale of real property located at 801 Cypress Gardens Boulevard. You may recall back starting in 2018, we began work heavily with DOT on intersection improvements throughout the Cypress Gardens Boulevard corridor. That's actually what led to the improvements at Cypress Gardens in 17 and also at First Street. We had also earmarked money and appropriated into our transportation fund to be local skin in the game, for lack of a better description, as DOT considered improvements at the intersections of 6th Street, 8th Street, and 9th Street. This item is to acquire the property noted in the red circle that is at the corner of 8th Street Southeast and Cypress Gardens Boulevard. This was originally a gas station, service station. It has been remediated since that use. It is now, I think, a window tinting and a vape store. We tried to acquire this property around 2021, 2022, but were unsuccessful. Someone had acquired it before we could get to that point. It has again since become available. We had an appraisal done on this property that identified the value at $1.45 million. We had appropriated, we have within our transportation fund $1.9 million for intersection improvements along this corridor. AJ, do we have the image that shows the potential alignment of what this would look like? So this was a concept that was actually created by the Florida Department of Transportation's design team. Again, roughly 5-6 years ago, that showed that if that property had been acquired, how you could better align the 8th Street coming down and tie into a cleaner intersection at 9th Street. Presently, traffic that wants to come onto Cypress Gardens Boulevard from 8th Street cuts through private property and uses an exit driveway access that just so happens to be signalized at TD Bank. We discussed this at length with DOT, and they have expressed their support for this. They see this as a means to achieve a better solution at that intersection. They would be responsible for all the intersection improvements. We acquire the land, and then we would donate the necessary right-of-way to clean that up. We have negotiated a purchase and sale agreement through a local realtor representing the owners of this property, and that has been accepted pending approval by the City Commission. The purchase price is consistent with the appraised price at $1.45 million. The closing on this, there's some nuances with the closing because there is a tenant in the property already. And there has to be a notice for them to vacate. It's likely that we will complete all of our due diligence sometime, I would say, by late August, early September. And then closing may not occur until at the latest, as I've calculated the time frames, on or about January 19th of 2026. And that's to allow the proper notice and time frame that is in the commercial lease on that property. From the city's perspective, I don't advocate us taking on a property that has a tenant and being the landlord, because then we're responsible for incurring any expenses associated with a leaking roof or other issues with that property. And I don't think that's a position that the city should take on. The owner has agreed to the terms and conditions within the purchase and sale agreement. And pending commission approval, there's a small window that we have to allow a first right of refusal from the tenant. I don't anticipate the tenant exercising that first right of refusal. Once we have notice that they have waived that or confirmed not exercising it, we'll commence our due diligence and move forward. I do think that it'll take some time for the improvements to happen. Obviously, there's no design construction plans for this, and DOT will have to do their proper engineering to make that happen. But the timing to acquire this property, just so happened to be that it came back on the market. We have funds specifically targeting, improvements here, and we recommend the City Commission approve that.
All right, questions? All right.
Item 13B, Gary, would you present on this, please, sir?
So this item is a new item on the agenda. We learned 2 weeks ago, I went to Tallahassee to meet with DEP to talk about funding for all of our CIP. Basically, we talked about $75 million in grant funding over the next 5 years and about $155 million in SRF loans over the next 5 years. During that meeting, they made us aware of this new opportunity. It's called Supplemental Appropriations for Hurricanes Helene and Milton. And basically what it is, the federal government, EPA, has appropriated $1.6 billion for infrastructure that was damaged associated with the hurricanes. After discussing this with the folks at DEP, we felt like we could qualify. And part of the qualification, as we're going through that process, the per capita income here in our city is $30,101. The statewide average is $41,055. And you ask, why is this important? Well, if we're less than the state average, then there's 100% forgiveness in the loan, which basically means it's grant money. So we're on a very short time frame. We don't have the actual application ready to go to DEP, but it has to be submitted by June 30th. So we wanted to bring this to your attention that we would like your blessing to proceed with application for these funds.
You can submit it Friday.
But anytime we're asking the state for $94 million, we want to make sure that the commission understands what we're asking.
Oh, goodness.
So we think we'll probably get between 20 to 40, but we're submitting for around 94 million.
That would be
That takes courage. I love it.
tremendous.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, my
And
goodness.
the last item, I'm going to ask Brittany Hart, our Director of Public Works, to give you an update. This does not require any action, but it's something the commission may receive questions on as we move forward with it. And this is pertaining to the intersection of Avenue C Southwest at 3rd Street, adjacent to Egg Haven, Grove Roots, in that general area.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. So yes, as City Manager mentioned, this is Avenue C Southwest and 3rd Street, and a recommendation to install all-way stop control at this intersection. Currently, it is a signalized intersection, and the recommendation from our traffic consultant is to make this a 4-way stop. We conducted this analysis with the help of Kimley Horn, our traffic engineering consultant, after we'd received some concerns from the community and based off of observations staff had made. This intersection is close to a few schools in the community. There's a church on Avenue C. It's in proximity to many city facilities, new businesses and restaurants with many more on the horizon. And also we have welcomed a lot of multifamily development into this area, with still more to come. And so with all of this increased activity, it was determined that we needed to do a formal traffic analysis here. And that study, based off of the results that was determined there, Kimley Horn's professional recommendation, and in accordance with the MUTCD guidance, say that 5 times fast, it was recommended that we transition this to a 4-way stop intersection. As you may all recall, a few years ago, Avenue C Southwest was a complete street project that we funded in partnership with FDOT. And this intersection was slightly redesigned with the thought in mind that this may eventually need to become a 4-way intersection. And so now is that time. So we have planned for it, and here we are. And we are looking to bring that 4-way stop into the future. Our staff anticipates starting to notice the public with a July 7th installation of signage at the intersection notifying people that there's going to be a change coming. We would operate this for a period of time and then do an official change on July 24th, put those signals into flashing mode and let those run for about 90 days until we formally brought those down.
So Brittany, I want to understand, we're getting rid of a traffic light?
Yes.
Yes.
This would
That's
become a
awesome.
four-way stop.
Let's get rid of some more. That's a great idea.
Yes.
I'm all for it.
Me
Good
too.
job.
MJ and I discussed this earlier today. If you think back quite some time ago, this corridor, 3rd Street, had a signal at Avenue A Southwest, Avenue A Northwest, Avenue B Northwest, and those were all eliminated. There was one at 2nd Street next to the Greiners Jewelers and Dersheimer Insurance back then. And
Yeah.
we studied in Magnolia. We studied those over time. And again, with a 4-way stop, everybody's, everybody should be stopping at those. They shouldn't be running those, but they, sometimes they run stoplights too. But it just creates a more efficient traffic flow through there. You're not sitting waiting on traffic lights when there's no cross traffic. It just becomes more efficient.
Yes.
Something, that's a busy area down at that end. There is no parking. I've been down there on a Friday morning or Saturday morning to Egg Haven, and there is no parking. You're looking for parking all the way around. So I just wondered if there's been any other complaints about the parking.
About parking, a lot of complaints about parking in downtown, obviously.
We've got no parking problem. What are you talking about?
So, and we are exploring some options for parking facilities in that general area, and hope to be bringing something back to the commission before too awful long in that regard.
Thank you.
That's everything this evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Oh, actually, I think there is one more thing that I would like to get some under my report. We did receive notice from Florida League of Cities in anticipation of the Florida League of Cities Conference that is coming up in August, that we need to have a voting delegate designation to attend the official business meeting of the Florida League and vote on behalf of the city. So
I did it last year. So
So-
I'll do it.
the mayor
You do that Monday night.
We'll do it Monday.
and MJ has one item.
Oh, you have an
I
item?
do have an item this evening, sir.
Wow.
Just, you guys may have received a notice, but it's not on the agenda, but
Oh,
you may have received a notice Friday. We'll have some IT. We're making a transition of some of our hardware. And so that means some of our computer systems will be offline starting at 6 p.m. on Friday through probably midday on Saturday. It's a planned outage. So anything that is a critical system that'll be needed during that time, police, fire, water operations, traffic signals, none of that stuff should be impacted. But email, local files, some of those things won't be available throughout that period. So we're working with everybody. Just want to make sure you guys have that on the radar.
right. Anything else?
Nope.
I just have one thing.
Oh, wait.
I just
One
wanted to
thing?
say One thing. Yes, I sent you all an email, Mayor and Commissioners, but I also wanted to say here publicly that Latanya recently received her Florida Certified Records Manager Certification designation, which is an awesome, awesome thing. There's only a few other cities that have it, 2 in Bartow, 1 in Eagle Lake, and we just found out last week after a city clerks meeting that 2 clerks in Haines City had received it at the same time as Latanya. So I just want to publicly congratulate her again.
Congratulations. Anything else? We stand adjourned.